All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Paola Diaz, and I am the Outreach and Engagement Manager for the Hispanic and Latino Behavioral Health Center of Excellence. Uh, Today's webinar is titled Caring Through Crisis, Trauma-Informed Strategies for Survivors of Disasters, Conflict, and Violence. But before we begin, I wanted to let you know a few housekeeping items. To hear today's event in Spanish, please go to the Interpretations tab on your Zoom panel and click Spanish. You can also mute the English speaker's voice clicking Mute Original Audio. Para traducción simultánea al español, presione la pestaña de interpretación y luego presione español. También le aparecerá la opción de silenciar el audio original. Today's event is being recorded and will be made available publicly through our website and other social media channels. For today's webinar, all participants will be muted. If you would like to speak or ask a question live, you may raise your hand and you will be given access to unmute your microphone. Please make sure your computer speakers are turned up to hear today's presentation. If you're having technical issues, please send a message to the Hispanic Latino Behavioral Health COE on the chat box. If you have a question for our presenters, we ask that you use the chat. Simply type your question and hit send. We can also address the questions to the presenters at the appropriate time during today's presentation or at the very end. We will be sharing a copy of today's presentation in PDF format through the chat box, and we will also make a copy of today's presentation available to be downloaded through our webpage. You can also find it under our names, and it will be the recording of today will be posted on our YouTube channel too. Now, once we complete the webinar, I will ask you to please complete the evaluation. This evaluation will help us know more about your opinions and thoughts about this presentation and what other topics and trainings would you like to see offered. I think we are going to be sending the evaluation link at the very end through the chat, and we will also share a QR code at the end on a slide, so you can also scan it with your phone. You will receive a certificate of attendance by email approximately 1 week from today, but please remember to check your junk folder. The mission of the Hispanic Latino Behavioral Health Center of Excellence is to advance and support the sustainability of behavioral health by promoting community-driven, culturally grounded, and person-centered prevention, treatment, multiple pathways of recovery, and recovery support for Hispanic and Latino community. And we strive to accomplish this mission through the development and dissemination of culturally informed, evidence-based behavioral health information by providing training and technical assistance and supporting the growth and expansion of the behavioral health workforce that serves the Latino communities. Now, to introduce our panelists, we have Dr. Rocio Shang, who's a bilingual clinical psychologist specializing in traumatic stress among vulnerable and displaced populations. She provides therapy to adults, children, and students. And in 2021, she founded the first Latino mental health clinic within adult psychiatry outpatient services, while leading trauma-focused research initiative funded by SAMHSA and the NIH for underserved population. And we also have Dr. Yari Marrero, who has over 20 years of experience at Universidad Central del Caribe with a background in social sciences and substance misuse counseling, and has worked extensively in addiction and trauma research, clinical counseling, and program coordination. I know they may have more to share about themselves and about the topic. So in order not to take up more time, I will now hand the floor over to them to begin the presentation. Thank you so much. I believe Dr. Rocio Shang is the one starting today's presentation.
Thank you, Paola, for the wonderful introductions. And it is really an honor to be with all of you today and to be co-facilitating with my colleague, Dr. Yari Marrero. So thank you for the opportunity. Now, there were some notes in the chat, and there was one in particular that was saying that she couldn't hear anything. So just to know, just to let the technical assistant people know that. So hopefully she can get some assistance. And hopefully she can hear us. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead. I mean, we have probably, I wanna say, 80 good minutes, and we want to leave some questions, some time for questions. And feel free to send the questions as they come in the chat, and Yari and I we will definitely try to answer the questions as they come. And also, obviously this is not a format where we can have much interaction, but please feel free to send any comments or any reflections in the chat. And I really welcome people from many different parts of the US and Puerto Rico. So that's really cool that you are joining us. So today we are going to talk about different things. We're going to identify practical trauma-informed care strategies that acknowledge the unique cultural, linguistic, and contextual needs of Latino survivors of traumatic events. We're also going to highlight culturally responsive practices, such as understanding cultural expressions of distress, building trust, and mitigating barriers like stigma, language, and access issues. And we're also going to connect providers with tools and frameworks to enhance their ability to support survivors of disaster, violence, and conflict in clinical or community settings. And I want to say that, oftentimes I think that we are all very familiar on how we are very proactive, right? So we do have like fire drills, we have, for areas that are more inclined to and I cannot think about the word in English, to temblores, earthquakes. We do have, like drills for that too. We have different things that really help us to, proactively know what to do. And I want to say it is a very sort of important opportunity for us to talk about, what to do in terms of proactively attend crises that come, and how we can focus on our emotions, feelings, the extreme stress that we might feel, at a time of a crisis, right? So I'm very, very honored to be here, but also super grateful that there are opportunities like this that we can proactively, think about what to do. Yeah. Because, unfortunately, many sort of situations happen that can be very traumatic. And the more that we proactively practice and talk and train ourselves, the better that we can respond towards these crisis situations. So here we go. So here are some of the topics. I want to say that it was a great and really fun opportunity for me to meet Dr. Marrero. And when we started talking to sort of prepare for this presentation, we found out that we had many common sort of interests in trauma-informed services and training. So there was a lot that we have that it was making sense to us. So I really hope that it will make sense to you. So we are going to talk about different models, and many of the models were not really developed with our Latino cultural needs. But since we do have amazing clinicians with Latino backgrounds, I think that we have been able to modify many of these models that we find are very helpful to be more culturally appropriate and to sort of represent and meet our needs. Okay, there is one person that does not have access in Spanish. So I know that somebody's actually looking into this. So we are going to try to talk about many different models and tell you how we are applying it. So here is one icebreaker. What could you do? And just try to read each sentence and complete it on your card. It helps me feel safe. And then you just fill it out. Ta, 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 ta. When everything feels out of control, I fill it out. The thing that helps me calm down the most is if I could ask for help, I would ask. Oh, thank you. When I get home, it helps me feel safe. Oh, thank you, Jari. When everything feels out of control, I pray. Okay. Oh, you sing. Yari, that's really cool. All right. I really hope that you have opportunities to reflect on this, to write down some of your, answers, and we're gonna move along. So here is the circle of safety. So, and we want to sort of pay attention to what elements make a space safe for you. What makes you feel safe? And, many times we start with us, but also it's so important because when we are sort of providing services, then we know that whatever we do, we also need to extend that sense of safety to the person who we are serving, right? That's really important. We are going to talk a little bit about radical healing and how this is actually very much applicable to crisis intervention modalities. And just to make sure that we cover this, we're going to just define trauma, right? We all know that trauma is an emotional response to direct or indirect disturbing traumatic events that have a long lasting negative effect on a person's attitude, behavior, and other aspects of functioning. And this definition is given by SAMHSA, right? We can go on and on, but I think that that's okay to just leave this simple way of talking about trauma. So one way, that I have learned how to, process trauma, but also how to assist people who are in crisis is using TARGET. TARGET stands for Trauma Affect Regulation Guide for Education and Therapy. This model has different sort of audiences that can be utilized with. One of them is adolescents, but we also use the model for adults, and we also use the model for children aged 10 and up. So here is something that I want to tell you that why I find that Target is something that I have been using since I was in graduate school. So it feels like many, many years ago. And so what I like about the model is that it gives you information about how our brain and our bodies work when we are facing normal stress, quote unquote normal stress, versus when we experience extreme stress. So extreme stress can be a crisis like the ones that we are trying to proactively, prepare for. And we hope that we never had to use these techniques, but in case that we need to, we can actually, we already are prepared. We have the tools, right? So that's what I like about the model. So the model is a multi-level psychosocial model based on enhancing the individual's skills and strengths, it empowers us, it focuses on the present, the here and now. We don't really go into many details about what happened to us, right? But we actually treat the symptoms that we are experiencing in the present, in the here and now. Its main focus is understanding how adaptations to trauma that initially work can be transformed. Okay? So the reframing is very important. And it uses an acronym. So it has been developed by Dr. Julian Ford, one of my biggest mentors. And if you ever meet him, it's super interesting because, he really thinks in acronyms. So no surprise that he had his model and you can have this acronym of freedom, right? So freedom stands for focusing, recognizing triggers, evaluating emotions, evaluating thoughts, defining goals, also defining options, and making a contribution. So the model really focuses also on validating people's feelings and emotions, reinforcing the positive aspects and what is working. It motivates us to transform what is reactive and to find an explanation for its existence. And it consists on a series of exercises that help activate crucial parts of our brain so we can work better with our brain's alarms. And it actually utilizes an amazing personal life that we call it the timeline. And that is a very good tool to utilize in order to weave in all the different steps of freedom. So the special focus of this model focuses on emotional regulation, information processing, and relationship building. And here are the key points. The key points is that we teach everybody, and we also, one way of learning a model is also practicing the model on you first, right? So if it makes sense to you and you can apply some of the techniques, it's actually easier to for you to teach it and for you to know how to relate to it. So the idea is that we teach people and we teach ourselves that we all have an alarm center. So, that is actually something that normalizes behavior, right? I have it, you have it. And as you already know, the alarm center is actually, it comes from our amygdala in our brain. Now, it's super funny because there are some kids that have told me, no, Rocio, you're messing this up. The amygdala is not in your brain. The amygdala is right here in your throat. And yes, I know we have it too, but then we have one in our brain too. And so when we say that the amygdala acts, one function of the amygdala is as an alarm center, then we can sort of start, weaving more information about what happened to us when we experience stress. Let's start with normal stress. And what happened to us is that, the amygdala, our alarm center, starts like making maybe noises, starts becoming activated, right? And it tells you that there is something that you need to pay attention, right? Is in sort of our daily routines and our daily sort of normal sort of stress. Then the amygdala sort of communicates with our hippocampus. And we know that our hippocampus is responsible for learning, but we also know that its function is like a filing cabinet. So imagine our amazing brain acting like a filing cabinet where all the different experiences that we have and all the different memories are really there, in a very nice order. So if there is something that is normal stress, chances are that we can go into our filing cabinet very, very quickly in a matter of milliseconds, and we know what to do. So if I'm running late for a meeting, or if I had a small argument with somebody who I love, all of those things probably are already in our filing cabinet. We know what to do. So then our filing cabinet from our hippocampus, it gets another sort of connection with our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex acts like a thinking center. So here is where we integrate all our information. The function is also that we can plan ahead. We do have a very nice sort of way of understanding things, right? And remember that the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that develops in our late 20s, middle 20s for women, and they say late 20s for men. I don't know why this is the case, but sometimes I definitely get it. So when once our thinking center is activated and sort of integrates all the information, and it happens in a matter of milliseconds, what ends up happening is that your prefrontal cortex communicates again with your amygdala, and it tells you, hey, things are okay. We are able to solve whatever was coming at us. And then the amygdala slows down and goes back, right, to the usual sort of thing. But this does not happen. So you have here a nice sort of graph that Target explains how it moves. Our brain moves from one place to the next, right? And the alarm center communicates with our filing center, with our thinking center, and then we're back. We are back in terms of saying, oh, things are okay. But that does not happen when we experience extreme stress. When we experience extreme stress, what was easily communicated, it doesn't communicate as easy. So our thinking, or excuse me, our alarm centers get super activated, and at times it hijacks our brain. It hijacks our brain because now we are actually in a phase of surviving, right? And when we are in a stage of surviving, we are not really going to check for if any horror experiences similar than the one that we are experiencing. It is actually stored in our filing center. Or we don't want to integrate all the information. We don't have time. So the communication with our hippocampus and our prefrontal cortex gets disconnected, and our amygdala takes over. And the whole thing is surviving, surviving, surviving. We get to become very, very narrow thinkers, and we really focus on surviving. And we do a good job, right? So if any of this group have faced any situation that has been in a crisis mode, you actually did whatever you needed to do in order to be here today. So and that's how our brain and our bodies help us to do it, right? The problem begins when, after we survive, our alarm center, because it has experienced maybe more than one trauma or crisis, maybe they started very early in our lives, right? And maybe they were for prolonged periods of time that this alarm had to be activated and hijacked our brain in a few occasions or in a lot of occasions. So when that happens, there are more chances that our alarm center becomes oversensitive and begins to overwork, right? So any little thing that is a reminder or trigger, of what happened before, can really start your alarm center. And it doesn't really start in a very sort of passive way or slow way. It starts and it goes all the way, right? And when your alarm center goes all the way, it tells you, the message is, you are in a crisis, right? And you need to survive. And there are many sort of hormones that get activated And, it really is great when we are facing a crisis, right? But it's not really so helpful when we are no longer facing the crisis and our alarm continues giving us that message. And that unfortunately happens happens for some of you who work with children, with families, and it happens more often, with children or with adults who have experienced a lot more trauma, and oftentimes early on their lives. So their alarm centers are oversensitive. So we understand that. And that's why, whenever we are in a crisis or whenever we have these histories, there are some things that we can do. And here we're going to talk about it. One of the things is how we reset our alarm centers, right? And one of the pieces that is, yes, that's right. That's right, Ilona. That's what some kids tell me. But we do have the amygdala in our brains too. Yeah. So, so one easy way to do it is that what we do is we try to slow down, we orient ourselves, and we do a self check. So oftentimes, I explain the self check as using our emotional thermometer, right? So, how do we slow down? Oftentimes, we all know how to slow down, but sometimes we don't practice as often as we should, right? And I'm as guilty as anybody who would like to admit it. But we can slow down as easy as with our breathing. Many times, nice images help us to slow down. Many times, some songs can help us slow down. Jari was sharing that she sings, and sometimes that is a very nice way to slow down, right? So we all have to find out ways that can help us to slow down. Because when we slow down, automatically we are helping our amygdala, right? If our amygdala is actually fully activated, you slowing down is helping your amygdala to try to ground your amygdala down, right? Orienting ourselves is super important because what actually accelerates our amygdala a lot is we are sort of maybe reliving something that we have faced in the past, or we are now going to the future and we're become super anxious of something that we cannot control. Orienting ourselves in the here and now can help us to ground ourselves. And many times, how we orient ourselves is just by noticing things, right? By, bringing yourself back. Some people start tapping, some people start, holding their hands, some people start praying, whatever it is that can help you to orient yourself, and to just bring you back to one thought at a time. That can be very helpful. Some people begin drinking water or ice, something that helps you to reorient yourself. That helps the alarm too. And when we do our self check, right? When we do our self check and we use an emotional thermometer to see how much stress we are facing in the present moment, what we are doing is we are already, connecting different parts of our brain, right? So, because you need to come up with a number, you need to integrate information, you need to, to touch your filing center and your prefrontal cortex to help you with that, right? And that in itself is another way to calm down your alarm. And you are providing a good feedback to your alarm. Even if you are facing, extreme stress, you are telling your alarm, I am, on a scale from 1 to 10, I feel a 10 right now, right? And then you do another self check and you're asking yourself, how much personal control do I have right now in this precise moment from 1 to 10? And 1, I have no personal control at all. And 10, I have absolute personal control. Just by picking those numbers, we know where we are standing And that can really help us to continue figuring out what we can do next, right? So that's how we sort of provide sort of the feedback that our amygdala needs in order to come down a bit, right? So the other thing that Target teaches us and how we can regulate better our emotions and help our amygdala is by identifying triggers. What is it that has set my alarm, right? And what we know is that many times the triggers come from our senses, right? And we feel the threat, right? We feel really like we feel that there is something very, very wrong, right? Identifying these one or two triggers can really help us, right? Because again, you are providing this information that your amygdala can understand, right? Now, we said that we need to focus on one or two triggers because if we focus on a million triggers at the same time, that's not going to help our amygdala, right? So we need to really narrow our sort of information. So one and two triggers is good, but we don't want you to focus in 10, one or two. And then we actually focus on a goal. Now, we understand that we can have reactive goals or we can have central or main goals, right? And the reactive goals oftentimes come from a amygdala that is fully activated, right? So if I'm actually very angry with somebody who has hurt me and I haven't been able to calm down my alarm, one of my reactive goals might be I'm gonna get you now. I'm gonna really hurt you the same way that you hurt me, right? So that's a reactive goal, an example. I'm not so proud about sharing the reactive goal, but sometimes we can all get there, I guess. But a central goal, a main goal, can be, with an amygdala that is calmer to say, yes, I am very, very hurt. And yes, I probably want, at some point, I want this person to feel the hurt as much as I'm feeling it. And now, I also want to act with compassion. My goal is to take care of myself. My goal is to bring more love to myself, whatever it is, then, that could come down more our amygdalas than whenever we have a reactive goal and it's going to keep us in that vicious cycle. So those are some examples that this sort of target model brings. And this is sort of the short version, right? So when we are in a crisis mode, we're not going to talk about the whole model. So we are focusing on 4 steps that are very important that can help us to calm down our amygdalas. So here are the things that I already shared with you. And now we're going to go. So here are some signs of an alarm being on, being activated. We might feel highly strong. We might feel defiant, or we might feel that we are disrespect. That we can disrespect people, right? Unexpected drastic change in mood. So we feel annoyed, isolated, anxious, sad. A strong reaction to a minor event. Speaking loudly, quickly, avoiding eye contact, spacing out, feeling distracted. For some of the adolescents that I work with, and my own kids too sometimes, is the I don't care attitude, whatever. And I always say this, another sign of an alarm being on is this strong feeling of urgency, right? Sometimes I even feel it in my office. Like I want to finish a task like yesterday, right? And that strong feeling of urgency that I want to finish it right now, right? So that can be another sort of sign. And here is something, yeah, Sergio, You can relate, me too, many, many times. So here is something that we understand about how when our amygdala goes on, right, becomes activated, what happens in our sort of body? What are the physiological changes? And here is the body's alarm system and how we experience the fight, flight, or freeze, right? So whenever the alarm center goes on and becomes fully activated, there are some hormones that get secreted because there is a part of the thalamus that also makes sure that produces these hormones. And one of them is the adrenaline, and the other one is cortisol, right? I don't know how many of you are allergic to something. As a little girl, I had asthma, and they used to, back in the years, they used to give you adrenaline. I mean, I had like injections of adrenaline whenever I couldn't breathe. And the adrenaline works wonders because the minute that I had the adrenaline in my body, I knew this. I could tell you that I still remember the rapid and shallow breathing. My heart almost felt that it was sort of, exploding. It was a rapid heart rate. But I was able to breathe, right? So that was actually very helpful. And then there are other things that happen. Your blood flows from the organs to the muscles. Why? Why? Because why? Because you are really wiring up to in front of a threat to fight, to flight, or to freeze. So this is something very important, right? Everything gets prepared. So your parasympathetic nervous system shuts down and your sympathetic nervous system is completely activated, right? And then your peripheral blood vessels constrict. Your palms, you feel them that with sweat, and your feet too. And you are only focused, you have to have a narrow focus during a real threat, right? Because the focus is what? Surviving. You want to survive. So therefore, your thinking becomes black and white, right? It cannot be great. You don't have time for that. So imagine all of the different changes that happen, right? And they are wonderful when they happen and you are in front of a crisis. They are detrimental to you when it happens and you are no longer facing a crisis. And unfortunately, for some people, children and adults, this happens very regularly, right? So there are studies, in the midst of it, you are not feeling pain because of the cortisol levels get super up, right? Because when you are trying to fight, flight, or freeze, you cannot feel pain. That's one way of surviving, right? If you feel pain, you're going to be paralyzed in terms of you're not going to be attentive to the threat anymore. So, so we know scientifically, and many research show that what happens is that when there are so many secretions of these hormones and we don't need it, then it affects our health, right? I mean, and it also becomes very confusing for for kids who are having these sensations of maybe danger or some threat, but nothing is there. You know, it is very confusing for adults who think that there is something there, but they don't know how to explain it, right? And then, it affects your behavior, it affects how you can relate to people, and it becomes more like a vicious cycle because if you are always sensing, or most of the time sensing threat, you are not going to be able to trust people. The word becomes super dangerous, right? And there are other things that are affecting, your daily functioning. You cannot pay attention to other things than surviving, right? So learning is not going to be a priority. Relationships are not a priority either. So there are many things that oftentimes we take for granted that help us, right? That are no longer available for people who have an oversensitive amygdala. How do you treat high cortisol? Uh, Yes. Well, obviously I'm not an MD, I'm a psychologist. But, one of the things is we treat with psychology, what we hope that we do is that the more that you slow down your amygdala, the less threat that your whole brain and your body will feel. And that's one way that, you expect that the cortisol levels might also come down. But you need to do this very regularly. And that sometimes is what we fail to do. What we fail to do is, sometimes we think that one one day in therapy or, doing sort of every now and then something to take care of our emotions is going to really help us, right? And it's helpful, but it is more helpful when we do it regularly, right? It's like anything. So studies show that yoga helps to slow down your body and your amygdala. Therapy helps. You know, if you belong to any spiritual group or religion, that can also help. Good, healthy social connections, healthy relationships can also help. And what I said is, it is not one thing. There are a group of things that can help us. Okay, so that's also important to recognize. And it's also being consistent. So here I already talked about this, and I know that I have, my time is actually coming to an end, but I told you about this already, the self-check, emotional thermometer. That's very important. And, this is almost like, sometimes when we have high blood pressure, we have to measure our blood pressure. So we can just think about these things, how important they are, because mental health is as important as physical health. And they are not really growing in isolation, right? They are very much weaving. And if we take care of one, it is very important to take care of the other. And if we do it in both ways, we're going to feel much better. And also, obviously, we have our spiritual health and social health and many other sort of components that are super important too. Okay, maybe we can do this. So I want you to take maybe a minute to write a few sentences about why you do the job that you do and how you hope your work makes a difference. Maybe you don't write it, think about it. Okay? All right. I'm sorry that I'm sort of speeding, but then think of a sentence that expresses your core values and beliefs. And lastly, remember your own inspiration, motivation during difficult times. So if you cannot do it now, I know that you're going to have this PowerPoint presentation. So maybe you can revisit it. It's super important. That in itself is a very important tool that we can all do maybe once or twice a day. And it helps us to ground ourselves and it helps us to slow down our amygdala. Rewarding to be able to help others in distress. Thank you. Thank you. To instill the hope of achieving change. Thank you so much for sharing. So, here are some examples of thoughts to help us find our own way to use the slowing down, the orienting ourselves, and the doing the self-check. So here are some thoughts. Just keep swimming, just like Nemo. I got this, I can do it. If possible, it is possible to do whatever I need to do. Graduate, if you are working with the students or with the students in any sort of a study period. I'm here for the children. That's what we are there for. Never give up. I am achieving my dreams. She is in my heart. Imagine your family. So here are just some examples. And thank you for sharing yours too, because that's really important. So here are some triggers. Triggers of experiences, sensations, or things. Triggers make us feel insecure. They make us feel out of control. They make us feel humiliated, disrespected. They make us feel bored. They invade our personal space. They seem very difficult to deal with. They overwhelm us. They seem to be hindering our goals. So these are some things to consider when we're thinking about triggers. Okay, I already told you about this, so I'm not gonna go here. And I'm not gonna there. And Jari, is your turn. There you go.
You can finish. Go ahead. It's really important. So go ahead.
I think that I already covered it. So go and then we can just have more time for discussion. How is that?
Okay. I will follow instructions. Hi, all. It's a great pleasure for me be here and joining this community, this learning opportunity with Dr. Rocio. This is not an opportunity that I took for granted. I am very grateful of being here and enjoy this opportunity as a learning community. So I am going to share some of my learning journey in trauma, and I am going to begin with the polyvagal theory. And Paola, this is not working. This is not allowing me to pass the slides.
Jari, I think that you need, I will pass it for
check.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she's able to do it now.
Okay.
Okay. Now I can.
Perfect.
Here we are. At this point, we are going to begin to talk about polyvagal theory and the application in the clinical setting of this theory, because we learned from Dr. Shan that our bodies store a response related to trauma. And then we are going to learn how we can use our body also in the healing process. Because if the trauma is stored in our body, we use our body in the healing process. So the polyvagal theory make a contribution in the clinical background or in the clinical setting to help us intentionally create environment of safety, connection, and regulation. When people feel safe at the nervous system level, they are more able to engage, reflect, and heal. This approach strengthens the therapeutic alliance and put a really important part in the self-care of the healer, of the person that we are working in the healing part, and reduce the risk of re-traumatization, especially for survivors of disaster, violence, and chronic stress. And in the setting that we are working on, we use the theory to understand the activation of our nervous system and how to use our body to slow down and to get back to us. And as Dr. Rocio Shan says, the survivors move through different reactions through trauma, hyper-aroused, hypo-aroused, and then the therapeutic goal is to increase the ability to heal or to regulate the nervous system through coping skills, to increase the ability to use the tools to regulate the nervous system. The polyvagal theory was developed by Stephen Porges and is explained how the autonomic nervous system responds to perceived safety or threat. It is important to understand why trauma survivors may remain stuck in defensive states such as fight, flight, or shutdown. In recovery, please hear that and take notes. In recovery, our goal is to help individuals to move forward a state of safety and social engagement where healing becomes possible. So we believe that healing is possible and that we can use the body in the healing process. The theory emphasize or identify 3 hierarchical responses. The dorsal vagal system is associated with the immobilization part and the dissociation part that are common symptoms of a trauma survivor. The sympathetic system activates fight or flight responses. So we are going to work in the ventral vagal system, which involves the ability of our bodies to get back and be calm and stay connected and practice the emotional regulation. Trauma care focus on helping clients access that system that not necessarily is developed at all. And we are intentionally using coping skills to increase the ability to use the ventral vagal system consistently. As Dr. Chan says, we have to practice in an intentional way. And in my experience, when we teach the brain to practice those coping skills when you are calm, then when you are in fight or flight mode, you are going to access that resources because you already practice or you learn it, how to use it when your brain is in calm mode. So if we want to access a coping skill, we need to practice in an intentional way in a daily basis. And it is important to highlight that every person find the way to use their body as a healing tool. But each one needs to identify what works for you. For me, works to sing. For me, work to move and use my body and maybe dance. But maybe for you could be or go to a walk, go to a run, or talk to a friend, or maybe go outside and give a hug to a tree, or give a hug to your dog. So it is an invitation to use what is worth to you, not what is worth, because we can find a lot of tools, but it is very specific to what works for you. And this model is based on the idea that the vagus nerve has multiple branches with distinct function, and one of the most important is the neuroception o la neurocepción en español, and safety. And this is very important to understand. And it is, I think, one of the biggest contribution of the polyvagal theory, that our body unconsciously has the ability to detect safety or danger. So that means that people do not choose their trauma response. So their nervous system does. So understanding this shift make us more compassionate and shift our perspective from asking what's wrong with you to what happened to you and how your body is trying to protect you, because it's a natural way our body tries to regulate and to find safety. It's as an unconscious things that all the human has in our brains. And those mechanisms make some changes or send some messages in our body. So you can feel in your stomach, you can feel in your hands. And then that's the thing that I tell before, that we have to use and find the way that works for you. Because for me, works a lot of things. Maybe I can have a talk with a friend or a reflective reading, but for you, you need to move on. Go to the park and have a walk or have a run, as I said before. So it is important to highlight that no matter what type of trauma are you experienced or you have been experienced, all of them stayed in the same body. So we have one body, one brain, and all those memories are stored there, and they are stored as traumatic memories that came back as flashbacks, as nightmare, and severe anxiety. And also, another symptom is dissociation. So it's the disconnection between thoughts, identity, consciousness, and memory. And also the symptoms as hyperviolent and exaggerated startle response, that from maybe you see the same activity and you said, this is not too much, but for a trauma survival, it makes at all. So we need to stop judging and use our ability to connect with people with compassion and try to understand what their body is telling. Because if the body is identifying danger, no matter what we do, the body is responding. So the best way to address that is to use the body to help the people heal. And we have hope, because most of the trauma survivors recover. And one of the biggest study on trauma is Dr. Judith Herman, and her mother says that most of the people pass through 3 stages. And the first stage is safety. Is how you teach your body and how you identify what are your triggers or what are your triggers, and how you use your body and the resources that you have to regulate yourself and to increase the ability of your ventral system to work well. Because the amygdala and all your body is used to act in an emotional state. And then when you get conscious about your no regulation, you can use your body as a healing methodology to heal yourself and also help others to heal. And also, Dr. Judith Hellman says that the second stage is processing and remembering the mourning. Some of the models go deeper on the trauma history, but the first stage just try to learn to teach people how to be safe and how to get connected with their body, and how you can use your here and now to identify your triggers and to increase your coping skills box. Once you are ready with that, then you can move on to another stage and be more deeper, and maybe use a model that used of the past. But to go deeper in the trauma history, you first need to learn how your body heals and how your triggers are. Because if not, we are inducing the people in a very strong pain that the body is not ready to process and to heal. And then when you move and you work in a therapeutic way and assisted with people that could help you in the healing process, then you can go to the next step, that is the meaning and reconnection. And when you find the purpose, and when you can talk about the experience without crying and without remembering the body pain, because the memory are going to be always, but the difference will be the way that you regulate yourself when the memory comes out. I don't know if Dr. Shan want to add something in this slide.
You're doing great, Jai. Keep it
Thank
up.
you. Thank you. So, keeping in moving in the introduction to post-traumatic growth, we want you to take out of this conversation that there's hope that most of the people heal, but there are some intentional way when people have to work with, and we call post-traumatic growth. What is post-traumatic growth? It is the way it's described the process which people change from struggling with their body and with the trauma memories and lead to personal, emotional, and spiritual growth. And it is very interesting because the post-traumatic growth model allow us as clinicians to measure where is our client in the growth, because it proposed 5 domains that we can measure and see how our client is progressing in their healing process. As an example, one of the dimensions of the growth include the deeper appreciation of life, personal strength, expanded possibilities, better relationship, and the spiritual shift. And how we introduce culture, the culture plays a very central role in the deeper life appreciation and how we use our rituals and our spiritual conceptualization in our healing process. My experience with post-traumatic growth is that we get the purpose of the struggle that we experience, and we use the connection, our family, our connection with spiritual things, our connection with our identity, our race, our rituals that we as Latino or are people that we enjoy, and we get together and we expand our possibilities, because trauma is disconnection. And with post-traumatic growth, we used to help people to get connected with their identity, with their culture, with their strengths, with their new relationships, and also to explore the connection with the spiritual things. And it's transformed the way that we see the adversity, because it changed, and we believe that the resiliency of the people could help them to go through the crisis and get out the crisis with more inner resources. So the post-traumatic growth theory integrates the emotional, the cognitive, and the relational growth, highlighting the recovery beyond the stress reduction. So we are we believe that we have the ability to pass through the trauma and not says, oh, well, the time will heal the thing. No, the time will not heal the things. The key is what we do in the time while we are healing. So we have to make certain intentional action to help us in the healing process. And we can measure how we can go through this post-traumatic growth using certain measures and certain instruments to help us. What are the therapeutic goals that we can use to move through the healing and through the growth process? So those are the 5 principles of post-traumatic growth, as I said before. The first one is the appreciation of life. If how those survivor, or how you see your ability to appreciate the life that you have. No matter what happened, you appreciate that you are a survivor, and you change the point of view of sitting in your pity party and use this experience as a growth. And also there's a change in the personal strengths, or in also in the tools that every person can achieve to identify what are the better ways to regulate myself. So when you identify and when you find new ways to cope with other things that in the past make you triggered, there's personal hope, personal strength, sorry. And also new possibilities, see the life with hope. This is one of the biggest challenges with trauma survivor, because the brain is like maybe in a story in the past, and then when personal growth and appreciation of life increase, there's a little sign of hope that begin and let these people to think that there's hope beyond the one. And also another thing that we can see or we can explore during the post-traumatic growth is the improvement in the relationship, because now the relationship are mutual, are emotional, open, and it promotes the strongest social bonds, depends on the ability to connect with culture, with other people, with people that are in recovery too. And of course, if you go through appreciation life, to personal strength, to new possibilities, and to improve relationship, there's a spiritual change. So it's a way to see that the people can change using this hope approach and go deeper through their healing process. And there are some examples. We know that we have a limited time here to go in deeper topics like this, but we want you to stay with some tools that you can go back and revise and see some example of how you can see the 5 domain of the PTG in clinical practice. So there's some change catalysts that you can observe in each of the domains: recognition, what is the gain in the domain, the improved quality, and the positive coping mechanism. So you can use that indicators to measure how your clients or how you are surviving through the crisis. So there is an assessment that we call the post-traumatic growth inventory, and it's a really useful because sometimes we can we know our patient and we see that they are progressing, but how we can measure that progression? We can use this assessment to measure and to see in which domain the patient have advanced and have growth, and what are the domains that we intentionally in the clinical part we can focus to help the client to gain a better understanding and to increase the awareness, and also a treatment plan to increase the different domains of the post-traumatic growth. So we are at the very beginning. Dr. Rocio Chan has a slide that go through all the topics that we are going to cover in this presentation. And now I have the task to connect the dots. I am an academician by training, and I want you to connect how those models and theories connect together to help you understand the themes that we covered today. So bringing together the target model that Dr. says, the FREEDOM acronym, and the polyvagal theory provide a coherent and culturally responsive pathway toward post-traumatic growth. Target stabilize the neurobiological alarm system. FREEDOM skills cultivate the empowerment, meaning making, and the intentional action. And the polyvagal theory make us to understand what happened in our body, and also help us to see the future with hope. Because if the trauma is stored in the body, we can use the body in the healing process to promote safety and connection. And as I shared in some point in this presentation, I love to sing. And one of the techniques that the polyvagal theory suggests is that singing is one of the coping skills that you can use to externalize when you are dysregulated and use the things or the talents or the ability that you already have to heal. So this is not something new. We are just putting the things together. But those theories are plenty studied, and there are most of them are evidence-based practice. So the science have proved that they work. So we put it together in this presentation to make you understand, since a model, since theory, and then with coping skills to help you with very specific examples and tools that we can use to regulate our psychosomatic emotional regulation. As an example, deep breath, mindfulness, conscious movement, emotional journaling, somatic CBT, grounding exercise, and self-massage. In the presentation, we don't have time to go deeper in those tools, but you are going to have this presentation. You have access to this presentation already. And also uses and practice as in your healing journey. Another that I love, I have a gratitude self-reparation therapeutic writing. And I use this as a daily reminder of no matter what happened or how regulated I was during the day, I have the ability to come to my bed and have notebook when I write, what did I learn about myself today? What emotion dominate my day and why? And what do I need to feel more at peace tomorrow? Because we need to reflect and to use the excellence that the tools that we have to be better. The healing process is not a mountain to climb and just be on the top. It is when we have good dates and not too good dates, but in the whole, we can learn how you can relate and be more healed and use what you already know about yourself. So it's a self-known journey also. And also, I want to highlight the importance of personal care in the healing process. It means to attend your needs, that it means physical, emotional, and spiritual. Spiritual is not synonymous of religion. You can be a spiritual person and not practice any religion. You can practice your spirituality, cultivating plants, helping others, participating in the healing process of other people. And also, if we known by the science that the trauma is storage in our body, we need to be compassionate with our body, with exercise, with nutrition, with the management of our emotions. The emotions need to be managed, not storage in your body, because if they storage in your body, they are going to transform in illness. So we have a responsibility to take those emotions out of our bodies using coping skills. Giving importance of your personal dreams and expectation, and also your values, and also your culture. Establish a balanced life in different areas as professional, family, social, and personal. Being flexible and be compassionate with yourself, acknowledging your changes and the good and not good days. And if you need one of the biggest coping skills that I have learned in my healing journey is to ask for help. Is one of the biggest challenges for me, and I share as a vulnerability. And I find freedom and humility in ask for help when I can handle the things that in my expectation I expect to handle well. So, session takeaways. Dr. Shan, can you help me with this?
Sure. Before we go into the session takeaways, I think that we have a little bit of time, and some of you have asked amazing questions, and I'm not quite sure if we're going to be able to answer. And thank you so much for your amazing comments too. So I just wanted to say that, all this information, Yari and I, we were sort of talking about how, it is relevant to our Latino communities. And one of the things that I believe that it actually sort of brings a good umbrella for us to understand is there is a whole movement that I want to say that it started during the pandemic, where amazing colleagues, and one of them I want to say is Puerto Rican Hector Adames. They sort of put together, joined their forces, and formulated and developed a radical healing framework to understand how the systems, who oftentimes they're not super tangible to us, right? Because we don't
To us.
really see them, right? But they are sort of pretty much empowered to sort of provide or not provide the any resources that we might need for our to develop our overall well-being, right? So, there are laws, there are many sort of policies, there are many sort of things that happen that are systems that are in place that foster many of the resources that we have available, right? So oftentimes we are not super conscious about how we try to treat ourselves as individuals, and we don't understand how the systems are affecting what we are going through. And for that, radical healing sort of put together many different theories. And one of them is liberation psychology, which we all should feel super proud of, because liberation psychology was developed in Latin America. And the basic premises on that is pretty much that, how the system are impacting the communities, and how, policies, laws are actually really making direct influence in how people live. And so if there are radical healing proposes 5 different principles that I want to say, if we take them into consideration with whatever we do, I think that can also help us. And I want to review this with you. The 5 principles have to do with feeling very much very conscious and welcoming our own cultural background and values, right? And oftentimes, whenever we, and I definitely gonna watch the movie that you are recommending. Thank you so much. So whenever we are more conscious, we have a critical consciousness on who we are, our own identity, and how the people who we are serving, what is their cultural identity. That can be part of our treatment, and that can also be part of the crisis intervention that we do, right? Because we all know that our cultural identity is what makes us who we are. And then, there is also a space for radical hope and what it means, right? Just like Dr. Marrero was saying, many times we can define things for ourselves, but that doesn't mean that our own definitions can be generally applied to everybody. And even if we are from the same cultural background, it doesn't mean that we share the same things. Then we also focus on, oh my God, now I'm forgetting the whole thing. We have radical hope, critical consciousness, and now I'm blanking. I'm so sorry. Here we are. I'm gonna just look very quickly. I'm gonna just have my cheat sheet here. Oh, here I have it. I thought that I had it, and now I'm like, oh, where is it? Okay. Collectivism, our sense of collectivism is part of who we are as Latinos, right? Cultural authenticity and self-knowledge, how we can really promote that, right? How we can feel super proud of our sort of communities, what they bring, our own cultural values, what we have to offer. And I want to say that, I know that we have this big movement with Benito, right? With Bad Bunny. And what a wonderful way to sort of foment the cultural authenticity and to sort of be super proud of, who Puerto Ricans are, right? And how that is expanding. I think that all Latin American is watching very carefully and sort of appreciating what has actually given to all of us. Strength and resistance, part of all of this frame will help us to become very much advocates,
And empower.
advocates for ourselves, but also for others. And when we practice these principles in our own lives, but also with the people who we serve, I think that we can continue making a difference.
A difference.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Teya. Wasn't it super powerful? We can talk about this. Is like, I know that there are people who are now teaching courses about, the big movement of Bad Bunny. So that's actually. So thank you so much for sharing. So
And Rocio, I just want to add that it's a tremendous opportunity to see the identity as an inner force to change the perspective that you have from yourself and to accept what you have, what you are, and to embrace the difference and to I can, as my accent, that I can speak fluent English, but I have the ability, but I choose to see, well, I can be fluent in English, but I speak two language. So my brain is switching between Spanish and English, and that's a strength, not a vulnerability. But sometimes we see that as a vulnerability, and we don't have the courage to be in front of people because we set the standard with others' identity, not mine. So I am a Latino. I will have the accent my whole life. So I celebrate the ability to talk two languages and to help my brain and be compassionate with myself to navigate between Spanish and English and make you understand me, even though English is not my native language. So it is an opportunity to embrace who we are and use that as a powerful and an empowerment tool to empower the community, because we heal in community. No one can heal alone. We heal in the group meeting with friends. We heal in the meetings that we don't want to go, but then we go. We went and we know people that are struggling as well as us, and we get new connections. So if trauma disconnect, let people connect through the cultural values, through the rituals, to their spirituality, to their coping skills. Then you are running alone, and then you find a run club that you can be part of, and then you find that it's a sense of belonging, that now I belong to a run community. Or if I am a journaling and I find a group of journaling as me, or if I do crochet, or if I cook, I find a cooker club. So there's hope beyond the hurt, and there's ability to heal through a community, through our culture, and to our uniqueness.
Awesome. Awesome, Dr. Marrero. I don't have anything else to add. You said it beautifully. Well,
I
maybe
just
I have
want
something to add. Go
I
ahead.
just want to address a question that I have that I don't see before. Sergio Renta's question that the nervous system responds. So you have saying that the nervous system has memory. Our body has a memory. So not some, but it is complicated to explain how our body stores memory in this webinar. I am not a physician, but I have to say that our body stores a memory, and that we can control how our memory comes through our body, but we can regulate the way we react when this memory comes home. So there is hope beyond hurt. There is tool, there is a community, you are not alone. And I am so sorry if I missed a question.
Yeah.
If I miss, please, you can write me. I see here, I don't know if we have time. Paola, just let me know if we have time to address more questions.
Yes, you have 5 minutes more to address questions. I'm just gonna go ahead. You guys have resources here, and I'm
Yes.
sharing again, everybody, the presentation on our chat. It's also on our resources box. I see that people are unable to download it, but we're going to be sharing it through our webpage, and you can find it with with the same name of today's webinar. But you guys can go ahead and continue answering questions.
I am going to address, will you add context how Latin people, given our history of oppression, have lived this process? We all have a history of oppression, and we can call about trauma, historic trauma, and the way and the significance that transformed our community. But we also have history of resilience, of how we overcome those oppression. This is not just only positive psychology. This is evidence that when we get together, we are strong. And when we plays a crucial role in our advocating part, naming that oppression, and make our fight, our voice, and raise our voice with people that feel or believe in the same lucha that we struggled, that we have, we can find the meaning of that as a community. So the invitation is that we can use the community as a healing to continue advocating for those forces of oppression that we know that are expressed in all our systems.
Hi everyone. Well, I guess if there
Okay.
are no more questions, and
no
you
more
guys
questions.
are already ready, I guess I'm gonna ask everyone to please just complete our evaluation. The links were shared through the chat. You also have the QR code on, and it's also on our presentation that's been shared. So please go ahead and do that. But we're gonna be finishing today's presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Marrero and Dr. Shang, for today. Everything was great, and really the information that you guys shared was very important, and certainly something that needs to be spread more.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Dr. Marrero. It has been amazing to be co-facilitating this discussion with you.
It was an honor for me to learn from you.
No, we're learning together. Thank you. And
Have
thank
a
you,
good
Paola,
afternoon,
for
everyone.
organizing.
Yeah.
Really
Yes, thank
appreciate it.
you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.